Hi, my name is Aaquib Wani, and I'm an experiential designer, and I'm an artisan. I'll do one more time.
No, that's okay.
Sure, I can give you 20 takes if you want.
Welcome to No Pressure, the podcast where creatives tackle tough questions about the business, honestly and without the stress. Kicking things off, we have Aaquib Wani, a multidisciplinary designer whose work spans music, fashion, and culture, crafting immersive brand identities, stage designs, and visual narratives for some of the biggest names in the industry.
I don't want to be a graphic design studio. I don't want to be an interior design studio. I don't want to be a studio which just does weddings either. I want to be a studio that does everything.
I think as creatives, definitely this is true for you, as being someone who actually enjoys multiple aspects of it. How do you make the decision of saying one will pay the bills more?
I mean, it was a very easy decision. Being in a metal band, you know for a fact that you're not going to be making a lot of money.
But do you think that the nuance that you're talking about will develop over time? Biggest threat that most creatives are facing is that as it gets programmed further and further, we're going to have models that will then be able to, let's say, add a more human.
That's bullshit.
I'm getting your thoughts. Given that you work with different mediums and across different spaces, and you're talking about this idea of emotion, what does your process look like?
Obviously, we have to look at it from the lens of who you're targeting, how do you target, how do you market it. So everything we have to obviously go through all those pieces where we've sort of done our research to understand all of that as well. It's all great to be thinking in your mind and to be thinking it on your computer, but if it does not translate on a physical piece, obviously we have to tweak things around.
But again, this is like now. This is the Aaquib of today who's done 1,000 projects and can actually rely on a form of muscle memory to counteract that. But back in the day, how did you deal with creative block?
Now with a particular client, they've reached out to us because they've seen our work, right? But at the end of the day, they also like, but I want this to be done this certain way. And I'm like, this is not going to work. Even designing that one jacket for Ranveer Singh, we wanted to try lights on that jacket, right? I was like, it'd be cool to have lights. Last minute, something didn't work out. We had to take all those lights off. And, when I met Ranveer also, he's like, lights kahan hai? Lights kyun nahi chali? Isme kya ho gaya? I was like, it didn't work out.
Of all of this madness that you have ensued, if you had to pick one project,
I think the Indian cricket team jerseys, to be very honest, I am someone who grew up playing cricket a lot, and I still remember the opportunity when it came to me. I got a phone call saying, listen, Aaquib, there's an interesting opportunity. It would be great if you could come down to Delhi and discuss.
I do want to quickly get your thoughts on the more economical aspects of this industry. How do I price my work, or how do I price my service?
Just throw a number. Throw it. What's the worst that could happen?
Hi Aaquib, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
Honestly, I have obviously seen your journey as a passive observer for a while now, and you've done an incredible amount of things over the last many years. But I want to start this at the beginning, and can you tell us a little bit about how you got into the space you're in today?
Well, it's been, to be honest, 15 to 16 years roughly for me to be where I am today. And to be very honest, this happened during my 11th standard. I was terrible at studies, and obviously I did everything apart from studying, which meant, would it be playing music? Would it be making art? Would it be just playing sports? It would essentially be pretty much doing everything else apart from just studying, right? And obviously, my 11th standard results came in. I failed. I failed by a landslide. I had about out of 500, I scored 47 marks. That was obviously a joke. Obviously, my parents were like, "What were you doing?" But I was like, what, never mind, I'll repeat the class. Also because I was the youngest in the class, I was like, it's okay. And to my surprise, and to my parents' surprise, I failed again. And obviously that was a bigger shocker for everyone but me, because in my head, I knew why I wasn't doing well, because I just couldn't study, right? And that was the time when I actually had picked up the guitar. I started playing in a band. I formed a band. I started making artwork also. Like, in my arts class, I was always good. I was pretty much good at all the extracurricular activities. And all of this obviously led me to then wanting to do a lot more in the whole space, because eventually anything that was not studies was where my heart was. And this also takes me back to my roots, which is Kashmir essentially. And coming from a family of Kashmiri handicrafts, my dad had his business back then, which was dealing into the Kashmiri arts and craft. And this is when we used to have these artisans come over at home. And obviously, I would be someone who would always be interested in sitting and just listening to conversations my dad would have with these artisans. He would give them a brief. They would come back 6 months later with a piece that would obviously blow my mind to understand, like, okay, these guys haven't been to a college. These guys haven't been to a fashion school. These guys haven't even been to any, like, no one's really taught them anything.
Yeah.
Yet they're able to put things out the way they do. And it was incredible to see that, right? So obviously for me, that bulb lit up in my head saying, okay, it's not the end of the world where, if I'm not done good in studies, I could always learn things on my own, which is what I had an example right there, because they were self-taught eventually, right?
Yeah.
Which is what eventually led me to, I did apply for a college, but again, having whatever 52% in 12th, for a fact, even a 92 percentile doesn't really get anywhere. But
No.
I realized that, I want to do things on my own, and eventually started touring with my band a lot. And my very first paid gig that I had was essentially, I started making artwork for my own band's shows. Right? We wanted to promote shows. We were playing college shows. We were playing club shows, small club shows where, max to max 40 to 50 people would turn up. But then again, that only happened because I started making posters. And eventually that led to other bands looking at my work, and they were like, Aaquib, this looks great. Why don't you sort of make stuff for us as well? And I was like, yeah, if it pays, why not? I would love to do that. And eventually that led to me getting my very first job offer, which was a music magazine. And back in the day, there used to be this magazine called RSJ, which was apparently, the thing to be at, because again, one place that's talking about music. Internet wasn't huge. I'm talking about year 2008, 2009, right? And internet wasn't as big as what it is now. And that eventually again led to me taking up that internship. And that RSJ magazine also had an events division. So I in fact got to work on my very first event, which was called Great Indian Rock, which was the OG festival back in the day. All international, most of the international bands used to come in, Indian bands used to play, and it was a very cool place to play,
I'm sure.
And from there on, I was obviously, parents were obviously much more relaxed after that, because they realized, बच्चा settle हो गया है, कर रहा है, कुछ गलत काम में नहीं है, that's all that matters. So eventually everything worked out in that moment.
I'm curious, because you started out with music, why leave it entirely? Because I think as creatives, and definitely this is true for you, as being someone who actually enjoys multiple aspects of it, how do you make the decision of saying one will pay the bills more or do more for me than the other will? Because you were already touring.
Yeah. I mean, it was a very easy decision. Being in a metal band, for a fact that you're not going to be making a lot of money. I mean, it doesn't really cut through. In a country like ours, where indie music in itself is a challenge to break through, unless, you're doing some mainstream music, which, to be very honest, I wasn't into at that point. It was all about rage. It was all about anger and all of that. Obviously, teenage, how that worked back then. And then we obviously wanted to do things differently. But through the years, obviously, I realized it's not a sustainable career choice, to be very honest, because you are 5 people in a band, even if you're getting paid 50,000, 10,000 for a show, and out of which, obviously you're spending 3 to 4K on just travel and paying for jam pads and all that, which was a completely, yes, it was great as a hobby and to just do what you loved, but then at the end of the day, you had to be real, you had to pick a battle. And I realized that, obviously, I also obviously enjoyed making art and designing things. Is where I eventually, my mind also leaned towards, because I was doing a lot more there than being in a band. Because again, within the band, you had to do बहुत घिसाना पड़ रहा था मेरे को, दिख क्या रहा था, which is why I had to sort of obviously take a step back and take a decision.
Early on, once you've made that decision, were there any challenges or roadblocks that you were facing? Because obviously even design at the time was not blowing up the way that it is right now, and what it means to be a designer has changed so substantially over the years. What were the first few years like for you?
I mean, it was still at that point, obviously, being a self-taught, for me, it was just trying to understand software, trying to understand how do I get what I want out of my software itself. That to me was the biggest challenge, because again, I hadn't been to a design
Design
college,
school,
right?
yeah.
For me, it was everything was learning on the job. It was about making mistakes and learning from them, right? So that's all I did in my very first job. Yet, obviously, I was putting out cool work. Everyone was appreciating the stuff that I was doing.
Yeah.
But obviously, there were places where I was learning things from. Like, it was a magazine, right? So I would be buying magazines, understanding, learning, teaching myself, okay, how this is to be done. I mean, it was completely something that was new for me, right?
Yeah.
And even the software that they were working as a magazine was not the software that I was working on. So everything was a learning curve for me. And eventually, obviously, I had to adapt within how things were moving, right? Every day there would be a new challenge again. That's how I've really come to where I am. Challenges have shaped me, and
Yeah.
challenges will continue to probably get me more cooler work eventually.
For sure.
Yeah.
Quick thing, if you could recommend one software to people who are in the design space as like a non-negotiable, everything else you learn, great. What would that
Yeah,
be?
to be honest, it depends on what field you're into. If you're a graphic designer, obviously the entire Adobe suite you need to have,
Yeah.
on your fingertips. To be very honest, now obviously with AI and coming into the picture, lot has changed. A lot has changed, obviously, and it sort of there is another perspective to what you're doing using that tool as well, which is cool. I mean, obviously, don't misuse it, but I would say like use it in a way which helps your creative mind to grow. That's how I would
I
say.
was going to come to this a little bit later, but since you have already raised the topic of AI, in your opinion, how has that shift changed the role of a designer in the ecosystem today?
I mean, to be honest, it does help people who are not really able to probably illustrate, who don't usually use softwares. And, it helps them to also sort of explore their creative side, right? There are days when I've seen, okay, people can't draw, but they are very keen using their thoughts and their ideas to put that together. And that's where this has come for them.
Yeah.
And they're able to sort of channel it well. And then I've seen people who can't, illustrate, but they've got a very they've got cool concepts to put it together too, right? And that's where I think, yes, it's good for those guys. But not saying that people who can illustrate are not allowed to use it. But then again, I feel like someone like us as a design studio, we also design interiors, we also design architectural stuff as well,
Yeah.
right? When we put something as prompts, the kind of results we get, for a fact that's not going to happen, because
Yeah.
you need a structurally safe piece to put together, right? You
Yeah.
can't just put something that AI has generated for you and
Yeah.
be like, okay, this works. Eventually, it needs an okay certificate from a structural engineer at the end of the day, and AI would never probably think of those things.
Yeah.
Yes, the result would look great, but it doesn't work for us. I feel it was interesting in the beginning to put thoughts together, but now I just feel like I don't need it.
Yeah.
I mean, yes, it helps me to put a image together, but then why do I need that when I can probably put that together using a software on my own? Because then I can tailor make it for
Yeah.
my own self, right?
Yeah.
So for me, yeah, it was fun at the beginning. Now it's just another tool out there.
But do you think that the nuance that you're talking about will develop over time? Because obviously the hope with AI and the biggest threat that most creatives are facing is that as it gets programmed further and further,
Yeah.
we're going to have models that will then be able to, let's say, add a more human.
That's bullshit.
I'm just getting your thoughts.
I'll tell you why. I'll be very honest. See, the concepts we come up with, the narrative we come up with, it comes from the heart,
Yeah.
which a computer probably doesn't have, right? Yes, it'll cook up something together, which is very interesting, but at the core of it, a story that we come up with, a narration that we come up with, it comes from certain experiences that we've lived, right, as humans. And that's where humans will always have the
Be a
upper
step
hand over.
ahead.
Yes,
Yeah.
always. I mean, that's how I think of it.
No, I love that. And that is the hope for sure.
I'm
But
not scared.
you heard it here, guys. But I want to understand, obviously, given that you work with different mediums and across different spaces, and you're talking about this idea of emotion, what does your process look like? How do you go about adding that emotive aspect to the places that you're designing, the clothes you're designing, the projects you're taking on?
I mean, for me, I feel every project needs to tell a story. It can't just be pretty looking graphics. It can't just be pretty looking designs. Everything, once you have a story to it, it makes more sense to what you're doing. You can always build from there. Everything. Like, for example, Lollapalooza came to India. and we got the chance to work on it. Right now, it's already an established festival, but how do you sort of change it around for the audiences of our country, right? So obviously, we had to look at it from the lens of who you're targeting, how do you target, how do you market it. So
Yeah.
everything we had to obviously go through all those pieces where we had sort of done our research to understand all of that as well, which eventually led to us thinking of a concept, because it's going to be in Bombay. Let's celebrate Bombay as a
Yeah.
city. Let Bombay be the home for Lollapalooza, because that's where it's happening right now and will continue happening in Bombay itself. So for us, the idea was to continue selling the idea of Bombay is the home for Lollapalooza
Yeah.
in India. And eventually that's how the whole branding came about. And funnily, I remember showing these designs to the international team without even having a brief.
Yeah.
Right? They didn't even tell us what is to be done or anything. We just basically seen what we had seen on the
Yeah.
internet, and we was just like went in all blind and like thinking, okay, maybe this works. And to our surprise, obviously they were like, this is great, this is
Yeah.
perfect. We haven't even sent you the brand guidelines. How do you have all of this? I was like, what? We just know nothing. Right?
Research.
So yeah, I mean, like I said, everything needs to have a narration. Everything that
Yeah.
we do, even for example, the Indian cricket team jerseys,
Yeah.
right? There is a
Congratulations on that, by the way. They look amazing.
Even the Olympic jerseys, right? Everything has a story to it. It's not just because it's a piece of fabric the athletes are going to be wearing. There is a narration to it. Everything that they wear has a story to it. So it makes more. It just has a lot more meaning to it rather than just being a piece of cloth. So yeah.
I love that. But can you break down the process a little bit? Let's say a client comes to you. What is your start to end? Is there a start to end?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
There is. Now, when we begin, we try and understand. Okay, what is the ask? Like, right? For example, let's talk about the Olympics jerseys.
Sure.
Right now, they came to us saying, okay, here are the things that we want to talk about, which obviously meant wanting to celebrate an athlete's story as well within what they're going to be wearing. The idea was also to talk about India, which is so vast culturally, even geographically. It's so vast that there are so many touch points that you could talk about as a piece of fabric that they could be wearing. So these were just bunch of pointers that they had sent us, and for us, eventually we took that as a piece where we were like, okay, let's build on this. Let's create a mood board. So obviously we create our set of mood boards together, throw in a bunch of references, throw in a bunch of ideas to say, okay, if we were to put something together like this is how this would look like, right? It's obviously a lot image based and obviously a lot of text based that we sort of explain to them as a first cut idea, and then which then once they say, okay, this sounds good, let's go into the designs, and that's when we sort of present come up with designs. And when it comes to putting a jersey together also, now obviously it's not just a simple round neck shirt either, right? The athletes need to feel comfortable. That's always been our first goal, over and above what goes on to the print as well, because it has to be functional, right? And it's not about fashion. It's not about how cool the print looks. Yes, that's another layer to the whole story, but eventually the pattern of the silhouette is where we were coming in from eventually, and then that then led to us putting prints on it. Then the whole process eventually leads on to having there'll obviously be feedback coming in from the client. There are days where there is no feedback, which is obviously the best day. And that happened with the Indian cricket team jerseys when we first presented the designs. Adidas took it to the Indian cricket team players, and when they came back, they said the designs final. I was like, "Are you serious? Are you sure you don't? There is no like make this small, make this bigger, and all of that." Because us as designers, we've grown up listening to such feedback, right? And that's what was incredible for us also. Like, but there are days when you have to also obviously be able to work with a brief and work with feedback round. So yeah, that's how the whole process works. And eventually, we do samples, we try and test and things how whatever we've thought of comes out physically also well, because it's all great to be thinking in your mind and to be thinking it on your computer, but if it does not translate on a physical piece, obviously we have to tweak things around. So that's how eventually things happen when it comes to a project.
I really want to ask you, what is your way of dealing with difficult clients?
I mean, it happens every now and then, to be very honest, because we're lucky that we have clients who trust us, and there are days when we have clients who would probably not understand what we are trying to say. Now, with a particular client, they've reached out to us because they've seen our work, right? But at the end of the day, they also like but I want this to be done this certain way. And I'm like, this is not going to work, right? And eventually, this all falls down into the whole point of, shall I just let him do what he wants, or shall I put my foot down to say, listen, what you're saying
It's
is not
stupid.
going to work. And this is a battle, right? This is always going to be a battle where you have to put in your foot down and be like, boss, listen, this doesn't work because so and so is going to happen. Like, obviously we have to obviously fight our battles here. We have to also sort of make them understand, and we give them a proper reasoning as to why it doesn't. Most cases it works, most cases it doesn't. And that's the time when we're like, you know what, design is a service based industry. A client has come to me with their wants, their needs, and eventually I will have to give them what they want, right? Obviously the part of structurally it being safe and all of that will obviously be considered always. We can't just put a blindfold on and just give them exactly what they want, because there's a lot that goes behind the scene as well, right? But like I said, eventually there are days when we have to also listen to what a client would want, right? Because we have to give them what they want. So yeah, I mean, we move how the client would want it to be done also at days.
I want to dial it back a little bit, because you talked a little bit about the fact that people come to you now because they know your work and they know what they're signing up for. But when you were starting out, and let's say when you've shifted from working at a magazine to now being Aaquib Wani, the designer, what is that transition like for you? And how do you then go about proving the worth of your thing, like getting your first project?
I'll come to that. The first project. So after my magazine gig, I actually joined a design studio.
Okay.
That was the first time I actually learned stuff, because at the magazine I was just doing things on my own. I was doing things what I liked and what I thought would work, right? There was no one to guide me, because yes, I started as an intern, went on to become a junior designer, went on to become a senior, to the art director of the magazine in about 4 years. Everything was obviously on my own that I was doing. And everyone was like, yeah, this works and all that. But from there on, when I joined this next design studio, which was to work with Suman Jaikrishnan, he is very eminent in the whole set design realm, which is, I had made a big shift from 2D design to 3D world, essentially. And then that's where I went into the world of designing weddings and spaces.
Really?
Yes.
I didn't know you started with weddings.
You'll be surprised, my very first gig. I'll come to that. So obviously 2014 when I joined that studio, for me it was a completely new world. They were obviously working on big ass weddings. I mean, the big fat Indian weddings. Things that you'll be like, what is this? Why are people spending 2 months to build a venue for a wedding? Why have I never seen weddings like these before, right? So you would have all these questions. And I remember my very first wedding that I was working on in 2014, I had my jaw on the floor and I just couldn't take my eyes off on what is happening. The amount of wealth people would be spending on just 6 hours, it was madness. But then again, that made me realize, like, this is great. Like, people have the money to give you to do what you want as a designer. Now, what is that world like, right? And obviously for me, I was like, this is incredible as a designer, because then, yes, it's someone else's money, but eventually you also, the idea of you coming up with ideas to execute them and to create a larger than life weddings was incredible as an idea. So I spent about 5 years there, and somewhere there, 4 years, sorry, and somewhere there in the middle, I remember we were also invited to be part of this exhibition called London Design Biennale. And we were representing India out of like 37 countries all across the world, and we ended up coming third there. And for me, it was an eye opener, because I had never been to an arts festival ever before, and that too where everyone from the world was coming and doing things, and some of the biggest names, some of the biggest designers were coming in and doing their bits. And that was very much an eye opener for me, and eventually made me decide, yeah, this space is really what I want to be doing in my life, right? This is 2016, and 18 is when I quit the job, right? And I was, because sometime in the middle, my friend really spoke to me heart to heart, saying, listen, Aaquib, what are you doing in life? Why don't you do something of your own? And I really, like, no one had told me that before, right? To me, job was 8 hours. Having fun, whatever, like, kaam karo, ghar jao, khatam, getting your paycheck at the end of the day. And moving out of that was, would mean that you're getting out of your comfort zone as well. But that sort of made me realize that, yeah, maybe I could do that as well. And eventually 2018 is when I decided to completely take a break. I literally had 80,000 rupees in my bank account, and I was like, doesn't matter. I'll make sure whatever has to be done will work out eventually. And then,
Oh.
which brings me to my very first gig, which was surprisingly huge. It was really huge. And I'll just tell you, I'll give you a small anecdote. Got a phone call
Yeah.
one fine day, like, what are you doing? There's this gig coming up. Here's the brief. You have to design something. You have to give it. I was like, okay, tell me what the brief is. And the brief turned out to be, listen, there's a wedding. You have to design a space, but the space is a part of this Sangeet that's happening. Okay, I was like, fine, we'll design a Sangeet. What is to be done? They're like, you have to design a pavilion. It's like, wait, what's happening? They're like, you have to design a pavilion where crafts are going to be displayed and
Okay.
crafts are going to be sold to the guests. I was like, are you sure this is a wedding? Because people usually go to a wedding, they enjoy, they eat food,
Yeah.
dance, make merry, go home. And this sort of didn't really, I couldn't digest this. Like,
Yeah.
what is happening? Why are people being asked to shop
Yeah.
at a wedding? And eventually, like, I submit my designs, and 2 weeks later, I get the call, listen, Aaquib, your design's been finalized. I was like, oh, that's great. I mean, funny. I would like to see how this
Plays out, yeah.
right? And eventually, I was like, okay, tell me who it is. And they're like, you're not ready for this. I was like, tell me. They're like, oh, this is the Ambanis. And I was like,
I feel like we should have guessed that. Like, I feel like, but okay.
I was completely dumbstruck in that very moment, because for me, I
Yeah.
was like, I'm glad you didn't tell me this, because I think the performance pressure would have probably gotten to me,
Yeah.
and I wouldn't have probably been able to make whatever. I was like, yeah, I just ended up putting something together, and they liked it for some reason. And then, and I remember we did mock space designs also. The family came, they saw, they were like, this looks incredible. I was like, great. I mean, wow, that 80,000 rupees in my bank account had another zero to it all of a sudden. And then I had a great time working on that, because that was the first time I was doing something of my own.
Yeah.
And that to a wedding like that,
Yeah.
which felt like, being a part of like IFA Awards, because everyone from Bollywood was there.
Yeah.
All of them. There was Hillary Clinton, there was Sachin Tendulkar. I'm just in the middle of all that. It was a very, very weird feeling also, because I had just quit. I had no idea what I was going to be doing. And here I was in the middle of all these fancy people with my own design, people interacting with my own design.
Was it intimidating?
Very much. Obviously, it is always. Like, I can't lie about that, because yes, we did not sleep for those 2 months at all, because stakes are high. You can promise the moon and stars, and if you're not able to produce what you promised, you're in a soup. So eventually, these are the things that you also have to obviously keep into account as well when you're working with the Ambanis, right? So yeah, that was my first gig, 2019. Funnily, an agency reached out, wedding design agency reached out saying, listen, there's a wedding happening. You worked with them before. We want to work on another one. It's another family. It's another wedding in the family. I was like, yeah, why not? So second time around, I got to be the art director for Akash Ambani's wedding.
Oh, crazy.
So again, 2 weddings back to back was, it sort of put me out there as this person who does cool things. And I was like, man, I mean, I didn't know this about myself either. I was just lucky that I was getting these opportunities, and to be able to put in my heart and soul into it, and be able to sort of, execute what our ideas were, was pretty much everything that I could hope for at that moment. So yeah, from there on, started building my own team, and then now we have a studio of 12 people. So we're doing a bunch of things. We're working on international music festivals, we're working on weddings, we're doing jerseys for Indian cricket teams. We're just like doing pretty much one of everything out there. I don't know how this happened, but lucky and grateful that we get to do these things.
For sure. No, absolutely. Something you've said has really stuck with me, because I think when you said, I came to be known as somebody who does cool things, versus a lot of other people who would say, I came to be known as a designer or a thing. Like, I've never heard you say that in this whole conversation. But I also think the reason it's interesting to me is because I feel like the debate between generalists and specialists is so, like, it's at its prime in how everyone is working today. Obviously, you've taken a route that allows you to explore. But what are your thoughts on that for like people who are getting into it now, right? Like, should you specialize, or is it okay to be somebody who works across spaces, does, like you said, cool things?
For the most part of it, was a graphic designer for like what 8 to 9 years,
Yeah.
right? And it's only when I quit my job is when I was like, I want to do the other things now because I
Yeah.
got bored. I also have ADHD, right?
High
Which
five.
part of my brain
love
doesn't
it.
allow me to do the same things every day because even when I had jobs,
Yeah.
I would go home and work on something else as well,
Yeah.
which nowadays is called moonlighting. But back in the day was
Freelancing.
freelancing or wanting to do extra work so we could have a little bit of extra cash.
Yeah.
Also for me was just like wanting to still be occupied and not just be sitting idle anyway.
Yeah.
So I feel like over the years, obviously, I was sort of preparing, obviously, in some ways that one way or the other, I'm going to have my own setup. अपनी
Yeah.
दुकान खोलेंगे किसी दिन. And which is why I was like, I need to have my own clientele,
Yeah.
which is what I kept working on, which is why people sort of knew me as someone who does things.
Yeah.
Right. And for me, right, I mean, I feel, yes, I kept my clientele going. I kept working on projects on the side while I had a job as well. I feel that eventually made me also realize that putting a business together was something that always I had in my mind. And now I'll tell you a very funny story. I met the founder of Almost Gods, Dhruv.
Yeah.
And
I love the store.
thank you.
Yes.
I mean, that again, we don't specialize in interior design either.
Yeah.
But then again, he came to me knowing that Aaquib, I know you do cool things. Do you want to do this, right?
Yeah.
And we eventually ended up building a store for him.
Yeah.
And again, like we built 2 of the stores with him, and it turned out great. People like Aaquib, what all do you do? And I was like, I don't know. You ask me what you want me to do next. I don't know if you want me to design a stadium. I'll be happy to pitch in ideas and
Yeah.
think of things that I don't know. I can probably think of. Coming to the point of how the young ones wanting to do, I think just follow your heart. To be honest, I'm doing what I like.
Yeah.
I ended up doing things that I didn't do because I like challenges, to be very honest, and I like doing new things. If I'm failing at new things, which means I'm probably progressing in life, which
Yeah.
means I'm not doing the same old things again. I don't want to be a graphic design studio. I don't want to be an interior design studio. I don't want to be a studio which just does weddings either. I want to be a studio that does everything. If you want
Yeah.
to design an underwear, I'll probably think of a very cool underwear. I don't know. Just throwing it out there, right? So it's just like it's just random thoughts that
Yeah.
I want to do this today. Now it's just funny that opportunities arrive in
The
studio
craziest
and you
way.
end up
Yeah.
taking them up, right? So even designing that one jacket for Ranveer Singh,
Yeah.
we wanted to try lights on that jacket, right? I was like, it'd be cool to have lights
Yeah.
because having a personality like Ranveer Singh, he's pretty much won everything. He's really flamboyant, right? How do
Yeah.
we up it, right? And we had all of 3 days to put everything together. We had put lights. We had put about 200 small little LED bulbs also on it, right? Last minute something didn't work out. We had to take all those lights off. And when I met Ranveer also, he's like, lights kahan hai? Lights kyun nahi chali? Isme kya ho gaya? I was like, it didn't work out, but it still looks cool, whatever. Like, he's like, yeah, it still looks cool, great, but it would have been great to have lights. I was like, yeah, probably next time. Now, cut to 2024, we're working on this store with Pratik Kuhat, right?
Yeah.
Wherein we're supposed to design the entire show.
Yeah.
Again, something we've never done, right? And I'm lucky that, again, these opportunities come to us where we have to
Yeah.
do things differently. Now, here, not only do we have to design the stage, we have to direct the entire show, which means what is Pratik going to wear?
Yeah.
What is the thing that is going to go on the LED? How are we ensuring everything from start to finish has a story, like I said, right? Now, this brings me back to the jacket that he made for Pratik. This was when I was like, you know what, I want to make that light jacket happen. And guess what we did? It worked out very well.
It did.
Yes, it did.
Oh my God.
Obviously, so failure led to me wanting to do things
course.
again. So, which is what brings me to the whole point again. Do what you love, man, and let it kill you.
I think how you phrased it earlier also though is interesting because like the idea of being able to specialize in something, like you can't do it without building a skill set, and that is the specialization that you've done, but then translated it into whatever and every shape and form. As a sidebar of all of this madness that you have ensued, if you had to pick one project that was
I think the Indian cricket team jerseys, to be very honest, I am someone who grew up playing cricket a
Yeah.
lot. And I still remember the opportunity when it came to me. I was in Goa working on Serendipity Arts Festival. We're designing that festival December 22nd. Still remember that day. It was post lunch time, and it was that, lunch ke baad jo neend aa rahi hoti hai. You're just tired and it's sunny, it's hot. And you
And
get a
you're in
call,
Goa.
and you're in Goa. I'm just like, kab kaam khatam ho? When do I get to go back to my hotel, change,
Yeah.
and just relax? I got a phone call saying, listen, okay, there's an interesting opportunity. It'd be great if you could come down to Delhi and discuss. I was like, phone pe bata do. What is it that one has to wait?
Yeah.
Because, from 22nd to meeting them, there were 15 days in between because their office was shut for New Year's and all of
Yeah.
that. I was like, I can't. Please,
This is like-
this is not okay for you to, obviously keep this away from me.
Yeah.
And for those 2 weeks, I obviously kept wondering, what is it? Why are they not telling? What is this mil ke baat karenge? What is this? You have to sign NDAs. And obviously we met them and they made us sign that 100 rupees ka, that
Yeah.
notary paper that we had to sign. And that's when they told me, like, this is what you have to do, and it's to design the jerseys for the Indian cricket team. Now, they gave me a disclaimer that, there are two more designers who are also in the line to be designing this.
Yeah.
I was like, koi baat nahi. The fact that this has come, we'll put in everything. And obviously, they had
Yeah.
5 to 7 days for us to be able to present those designs. And in the middle of all this, Lollapalooza's first year was happening. It was the same month.
Jan, yeah.
And, that was a hectic month for us, right?
I'm
So
sure.
during the day, we would be doing a lot of work on ground. In the night, we would be going back to our hotels and working on those designs. And one day, I flew down to Delhi from Bombay to do that meeting. And I still remember that meeting went so great that everyone from the Adidas team was clapping during that. And I was like,
Really?
this is again, we had only worked on jerseys on two different occasions
Yeah.
before this, right? And here we were doing this on a scale where you're talking to 1.4 billion of us, right?
Yeah.
And cricket is an emotion in this country.
Yeah.
And this is the same year as World Cup, which is last year, right?
Yeah.
And obviously it is so huge, and the World Cup's also happening in India.
Yeah.
And I remember, once the meeting got over, I was going back to the airport because I had to go back to Bombay for the setup.
Yeah.
I had tears in my eyes, legit, because I was like, this is, at that point, I didn't even
Yeah.
know if I'm going to be doing this. And obviously, 10 days later is when I found out that we're the chosen ones out of this. So it was a great feeling. It
Yeah.
was great to see India-Pakistan match with all of Narendra Modi Stadium wearing our jerseys.
Yeah, that's insane.
Everywhere. Like even now, you go places, you see your jerseys being worn by people. So I feel like the power of design,
Yeah.
where it all has reached, and as a designer to be reaching out to the masses, it has never something that occurred to me, or I would be able to do that. But it's great to be able to do that now. Now it's become such a cool thing for us that we've become that team who dressed up the Indian cricket team. And
That's
obviously
great.
we didn't win that World Cup, but we won this year, which was the T20 World Cup. So I
Yeah.
was like, yes, we had
It counts.
certain
Yeah.
role to play. So yeah, that was the project for us. That was the biggest.
I do want to ask though, I mean, in all of this, and you've talked about this phase, which was the designing and pitching of the jersey, but also working at Lala. Do you get burnt out?
Yeah, I mean, we do. Of course, I mean,
How do
I'm
you-
only human. There are days when we don't sleep, but then again, you think of the times when you're struggling to stay up. You think of the result, the end result. I always try and keep myself motivated as to what is my last goal of what I'm
Yeah.
doing, and I sort of picture myself in that very position when the project is done.
Yeah.
It's loved by all. You're getting great compliments. You're getting great feedback from everyone. That drives me every time. That makes me want to push myself. Yes, it kills us on site. I remember during Lollapalooza, we were doing 40,000 steps a day. Like I struggle to do 10,000 steps a day, even when I'm
Yeah.
wanting to, wanting to go out and
No,
do
festivals
10,000.
are.
And 40,000 steps a day was nightmare. And I remember, I had my toenails turned blue because of how much one was walking. But then again, all of that never mattered. But it was eventually the end goal. And obviously, we made such a huge impact with first year of Lollapalooza. All of the other 7 countries where it happens, all of them were talking about
Yeah.
it. Globally, it was a huge success. That first year of Lollapalooza looks like as if it was the 10th anniversary.
Yeah,
So
yeah, yeah.
obviously for us, for me, I feel that's where I sort of push myself whenever I'm feeling, okay, this is the end of the road. How
Yeah.
does one really move out of it, or feeling burnt out? Yeah, think of the result, and it really pushes me to get back to my, onto the track and continue doing what is
Yeah.
out there to do.
And creative block?
Happens, but now I feel like that doesn't bother me. Luckily, I've now sort of been in a situation where it doesn't matter anymore, because I feel like the brain has worked on so many of these projects. You know what is to be done. You have a solution to it now.
Yeah.
I think by now I must have worked on some 1,000+ projects,
Yeah.
and I feel like you give me what is it to be done, I'll give you what I can give, probably think of right
Yeah.
now. There'll be days when the client will be like, ye nahi chahiye, wo chahiye. I'll give them what they want as
Yeah.
well. So doesn't affect
But
me
again,
that way.
this is like now. This is the Aaquib of today who's done 1,000 projects and can actually rely on a form of muscle memory to counteract that. But back in the day, like, how did you deal with creative
I
block?
would procrastinate. I would just push it till the last deadline. Obviously, for all of us, we've done that. I know a lot of the kids also still do that, but I think that's stupid. I feel, because I'll just be very honest. Just get to the drawing board and start making things. No matter how good or bad it is, just send it to your client, or just put it out there. If there's an art piece that you have to put it even on your Instagram. Just be done with it. What's the worst that could happen? You're gonna get less likes. Your client is gonna tell you it sucks. It's fine. At least you know what's gonna happen. You're gonna come up with a part of your side where you attempted something, it didn't work. Now you have to go back to it and rework on it.
Yeah.
There are days when you can't do that, even because your brain doesn't allow you to even pick up that pencil. For me, all that I used to do was to just go for a walk or clean my space. I love cleaning. I'm a freak when it comes to cleaning, and yeah, just being with my own thoughts,
Yeah.
or water the plants. Maybe, I don't know, do house chores. To be honest, that's how I could really release my brain to think of something else. I think in moments you just need to switch off from your work and just come back to it after some time. Which is why they say sleep over it, and then next morning you have suddenly
Yeah.
sort of figured it out. I don't know how, but it just works. Which is why I feel like that's also very important, that you should switch off, and you can come back to it later and you will have a new fresh perspective. I don't know how the brain works, but it works in mysterious ways.
I do want to quickly get your thoughts on the more economical aspects of this industry. I know a lot of people have come to me as in the capacity of a manager to say, okay, but like, how do I price my work, or how do I price my service? What are your thoughts on like the right fee to ask for when you're starting out, and on the growth of that over time?
I have got this question a lot of times,
I'm sure.
because everyone's like, what do I charge? What am I even worth? Right? And I always say, listen, just throw a number, throw it. What's the worst that could happen? The client's gonna say, मेरे पास इतने पैसे नहीं, मेरे पास इतने हैं. And then the best is that, okay, you know what, let's come to a middle point and then let's begin. There are days when even now we don't know, on projects that we haven't worked on before, how do we cost them, because we don't know that, okay, if you're going to be working on this for the very first time, what are the extra bits that one is going to be spending. So this is how we sort of break it down. You see how much time you're going to be investing into it, right? You look into the expenses that you have, right? Which means my travel expenses are going to be there, my घर का बिजली का, if you're starting from home, your laptop, your internet, all of those are your base level kharcha that you need to account for. Then is what you will be charging over and above as your profits. So this is what you will have to really ask for, essentially, because you remember that you also have your own set of bills that you have to pay. Over and above is when you also have to sort of keep a profit margin to what you're doing. You can't just throw a number without doing that back exercise of what is it that you're going to be spending. If you're not doing that, I'm sorry, you're being a stupid person by just not looking into the actual numbers. So important to look into those things as well. Ask around your friends, ask around your peers, what are they charging, because it all depends on a lot of factors. Now, if you were given a project of designing a logo, is it just the logo? Does it involve making your adapts to it, which is stationery items, maybe business card, maybe a letterhead, and so on and so forth. Social media, does it also involve a brand guideline that you have to make as a PDF?
Yeah.
So there are things that you can keep adding onto the list, and you can eventually keep increasing the number as well.
Yeah.
So obviously, it's good to have a breakdown for everything, but it's also good to have a cohesive number to it, just in case a client would probably ask you, "What if I were to remove brand guidelines and just have 5 things to be done?" So you have a number ready. The idea is always be prepared, be ready with numbers, be so strong with what you're doing
Yeah.
that the client feels confident in what you're doing. Very important. The fact that the client knows that you know what you're doing
Yeah.
solves everything else as well for everyone. Because the moment you are like, मैं नहीं अच्छा इतना करूँ अच्छा क्या you don't have to dilly dally on those things
Yeah.
either, right? Confidence is very important eventually when you're putting out those numbers as well, because you have to be sure of why you're asking what you're asking for, right?
Yeah.
So eventually that translates with the client, and client always will be like, yes, I want to work with this person. This person looks like they know what they're doing, right?
Yeah.
So again, a lot of factors, a lot of R&Ds to be done, a lot of obviously failures involved where I am, to be very honest. There have been days where I didn't get paid, which is why I was like, contracts need to be set in place. So a lot of that
Yeah.
obviously used to happen, but not anymore. So yeah.
In your mind, what are 3 things that it takes to be a designer or a creative entrepreneur in 2024, now entering 25?
Well, for me, as an entrepreneur, I feel designing is probably the easiest thing now for me, because like I said, having done so many projects, it just comes naturally.
Yeah.
It's the back end of it, the admin work of it.
Yeah.
आज पानी नहीं आ रहा office में. What is that problem all about? How are people going to use the washroom? How is the
Yeah.
pantry going to function? और आज बिजली नहीं आ रही क्यों किसी ने नीचे खंबे में गाड़ी ठोक दी है. Like, these are the problems that every day you have to deal with. So yes, the back end of it, which no one really talks about, the dirty work of it, very important stuff that one has to learn that.
Yeah.
Then obviously trying to understand taxes. बहुत पैसे तो कमा रहे हैं, but how much of it is the government going to keep, or how much of it is going to get deducted as TDS? So lots of things. Again, as a creative, I feel no one talks about these things when they're studying in colleges. Why is this not a part of the curriculum?
Yeah.
Why are we not making kids ready for the real world,
Yeah.
and teaching them what font to use at what size? I feel these are the real things where, obviously students end up learning on the job, which I feel would be great if everyone's taught this at an early age, even if elementary school level also, that'll be great. But I think probably to end this off also, I think lastly, I think to be very, very sure of what you're doing and be consistent with what you're doing is very important, because I see a lot of my friends, see a lot of my juniors, they end up taking up a lot of work, but then, they get overwhelmed with the fact that, okay, how am I supposed to deliver and all that? And just worry about the end result and not worry about how to get done with it, right?
Yeah.
There are days when I have lots of work, and there'll be days when I'm like, okay, I'm not happy with this piece that we put together, but I will be like, you know what, no, but we have to send it. It's not for me to decide if the client's going to like it or not.
Yeah.
It's for the client. I can't be an artist when I'm giving design services, right? So that's something that's very important, that my own artistic impressions can be for my own self when I'm making art for my own self,
Yeah.
not for what a client wants. So that's always a big difference. I feel one has to always keep in mind, right? Separate the art from the design, because design at the end of the day is a solution to a problem, right? Clients come to you with problems, you give them solutions.
Yeah.
You can't be like, oh, but I like blue, I want to put blue, but
There has to be reason to what
Yeah,
you're
yeah.
suggesting.
So if an
Yeah.
emergency exit signage is always supposed to be green, it has to be green. You can't
Suddenly be like, no purple.
let me put a polka dot pattern also along with it because it looks
Yeah.
no, you can't do those things. So again, solutions, you have to keep those in mind. So yeah, I think these are a couple of things that I feel as a designer, as an
Yeah.
artist, to sort of be aware of when you're doing things.
I love that. I think when we have a lot of information to go off of over here, but just to close this off, Aaquib from 10 years ago and Aaquib from 5 years ago, what would you say to him?
I would just say, just be consistent. To be very honest, I keep telling this to a lot of college kids when I go to these colleges and give talks.
Yeah.
Just being consistent has really helped me. just being, be able to put work out regularly, and being out there really helps, to be very honest. That's how I've really built my career, putting my work out even from, I'll be honest, Orkut days to
Orkut.
Facebook to obviously to Instagram. You see there is my work's pretty much there on all my timeline.
Yeah.
You find it's been going on since then.
Yeah.
So I've been around since donkey years putting stuff out, and that's how eventually people have led. That's what's led them to discover me as a designer, as an artist,
Yeah.
which has eventually led me to work on cool things. And I think everything else, obviously, I feel
Follows.
Follows from there. Yeah, being consistent is what I would tell myself.
Words to live by.
Yeah, always.
Awesome. Thank you so much for joining us today. It's been
Thank
an
you.
absolute pleasure.
Thank you so much for having me. And I'm an artisan. Yes.
Awesome.